Hey, it's your girl Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic. Oh, let me get rid of that window and that door. That is not hot. Hello, and welcome back to episode 157. If this is your first time joining us, please give me a big old thumbs up to let me know you were here. Click that bell for notifications and subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, if Arsenio Hall can subscribe, you can subscribe. Okay. What we do here is we talk to talent above and below the line in the film industry, and I review films. But this week, I'm going to take a little detour from the film world because I got something special hanging out for you. But before I get to that, I usually start out telling you what my week was like very briefly. And so this week we did the South by Southwest Festival. It's a film festival that happens in Austin, Texas. I'm usually there in person. I didn't go last year because of COVID. It was canceled. And the year before I went, Us premiered, the Jordan Peele horror film. It premiered. So I'm like, wow, it feels like forever since I've been there. But there were some fabulous films that showed, like Demi Lovato's doc. There was a documentary called Who We Are, Chronicles of Racism in America, which absolutely blew the top off my head. Introducing Selma Blair was another one that I loved. The End of Us was another one that I loved. Here Again is another one that I love. So when those films become live and available for the general public to see, I will let you know. Unlike the other festivals that I've covered this year, South by Southwest was not open to the public unless you were in Austin, Texas, I believe. So I will be sure to let you know when all of that is going to go down and come down. I want to remind everybody that Genius Aretha on the Nat Geo channel is dropping tonight, the first 2 episodes. It will be streaming for the next 4 days until March 25th, when they will drop all of the episodes simultaneously. And if you missed it tonight because you're hanging out with me, you can catch it tomorrow on Hulu on demand. All right. So that brings us to where we are right now. So I talk about this all the time on this show. I have been recurring for the last 5 years on a little sitcom on NBC called Superstore as Janet, or Janae, as we like to affectionately call her. And it was my pleasure. I had such a great time there. And one of the people that I absolutely loved and adored during my time on Superstore was a little young lady named Lauren Ash. Lauren played DINA FOX. Loved her playing Dina. Adina was acerbic, non-apologetic, and just crazy as hell. Lauren is non-apologetic. She can be acerbic, but crazy she is not. I'm showing some pictures of her. This is my favorite. Lauren as Dina was a sexy cop every year that we had Halloween. And I thought that was pure comedy. Loved it so much. And I usually do a segment called Around the Curve, but I think I'm going to save it for later. And if we don't get to it today, I will put it up next week, or you can see it later on. But without further ado, before I get to Lauren, let me just acknowledge everybody that's in the chat room. Snake04, Zon Nation, Toronto Vasquez, Caitlin Howard, Kenneth Williams, Michael B., my boy Albert Lawrence. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. So, without further ado, let me introduce my girl, my favorite Canadian, my co-star on Superstore, who played DINA FOX, and we're going to talk about a little true crime action. Let's bring to the stage Miss Lauren Ash.
Hi!
Hey, girl, hey!
How you doing?
Oh, what's happening with my face? Let me fix my face. Damn.
I know, it's always like, there's just a quick adjust.
Where's she at? What's up, Lauren?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good, girl. Have you been decompressing?
I have been decompressing. Yeah, I feel like I'm not there yet, but I'm processing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I really do know what you mean. It was so funny. I was telling my producer earlier today that for some reason, a lot of people from the show reached out to me this week. And I was like,
I know. 6 years. It's a great run, but it's also a loss, you know. It's something to grieve when it goes away. So
it is. And it was special for a variety of reasons, and we can talk about that as we go along. But just to let the people know, you have a podcast called True Crime and Cocktails that you started with your bestie. I was like, why is she showing her breast?
Because they have a message. That's why they have a message.
Girl, I was like, oh no, she is putting the breastises in the picture. What
It's
is
too
going
early for
on?
that. It's too early.
I'm like, it's too early for that, girl. I just woke up. What? Okay. But it's called True Crime and Cocktails.
Yeah.
And you and your bestie started it. So let's talk about that before we get into these movies that we've chosen to share with people today.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's my cousin by blood, sister by life, best friend in the world, Christy Oxborough. And she and I, during the pandemic, we started watching Unsolved Mysteries, the new series on Netflix, and kind of discovered, independent of each other, that we were both obsessed. And so we were having these like late night kind of like drunk Zoom conversations about it. And I was like, you know what? I think I should film these and we should put these out in the world. And she was like, I don't know. She's a stay-at-home mom of 3. You know, she's up in rural Canada. And she was like, maybe I'll just do a little research. I was like, okay. Turns out she ends up being the most unbelievable researcher. She's taught herself how to read forensics reports, autopsy reports. You know, she gets her hands on, legally, gets her hands on court documents. It is truly unbelievable, the sleuth that she has become. And so we started doing the show, and it has been an absolute joy. We honestly have the best time. And yeah, we record, we have a couple cocktails, we talk about some unsolved true crime, and we call it a day. And she kills it every week. Every week, she's amazing.
Y'all both kill it. I've caught a couple of episodes. Y'all kill it, and it's wonderful. And I love I should have sent you some cocktails for today. We should totally do day drinking. I totally forgot to do that. Next time, doll. Next time,
of course.
What would you say, of all the things that y'all have covered on True Crime and Cocktails, has been your favorite one that you've come across yet? Do you have a favorite at this point, or one that shocked you that you were like, oh, really? Did that happened?
I would have to say, I think the one where she found the most shocking information was one of the Netflix episodes called Lady in the Lake. And it's a case where there is a woman who, long story short, police believe that she walked into a frozen lake and killed herself. But that seems a little bit like, I don't know if that's how people tend to do that. She also had no real signs that she was going to kill herself in any way. Long story short, Christy manages to find that there was a witness that saw somebody at the scene around the time of her death wearing a black scarf. Then she manages to find a evidence list from the police files, and one of the pieces of evidence logged was a black scarf, but it was never tested. And they basically kept it in evidence and then donated it to like a Goodwill without it ever being tested. But that was the one where she really blew my mind, because she managed to pick up on a connection that the police hadn't even picked up on, because they had kind of just dismissed some of these eyewitnesses, and then she managed to make the connection. That one, I was like, okay, you should maybe do this for a living.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just have to throw up this comment from Caitlin Howard. She says, literally do not understand how she has time to do all that research.
I know.
Incredible.
I know.
Incredible. Incredible.
And
people are showing you so much love. This one says, I have to listen to the podcast. Yes, you do, but you need to subscribe to this one first. How about that? I know y'all tuned in here for Lauren. Let me just call folk out. I know y'all tuned in here for Lauren. I see about 40 people up in this show live that tuned in here for me and Lauren. Well, mostly Lauren, but y'all can subscribe to a sister too. So I'm just going to take 100%. Advantage of the opportunity while I have it. Okay.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. Well, Lauren and I have picked some films between the two of us that we wanted to talk about. And the first one that we chose, and all of these films are films that we've both seen, you know, and maybe revisited for this little true crime detour edition of the Curvy Critic with Carla. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Monster, and it's directed by Patty Jenkins. Now, what y'all don't know about the Patty Jenkins trajectory, as it is in the trajectory of Patty Jenkins, is that Patty Jenkins made this movie. The Oscar that Charlize Theron won was the only Oscar that the film got nominated for, and it won. And Patty Jenkins didn't make another movie until 2017 with Wonder Woman, which is bananas. And that Charlize Theron won the Oscar for Monster on Eileen Wuornos's birthday, February 29th, 2004. 13.
Wow.
whatever year it was, but it was February 29th. I know that for sure.
That's wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So before I dive in, I just want to hear your thought, because I got plenty of thoughts about this movie, but I want to hear your thoughts about Monster and how you felt when you saw it and that whole Eileen Wuornos thing, because I think up until this time, we had never really heard about a woman being a serial killer.
Yeah, well, there's very few from my knowledge and research. I rewatched this yesterday as well because I had seen it before, but I was like, you know what? I want to do a rewatch. And I also was curious again because I forgot that it was Patty Jenkins. And then I was like, I want to rewatch this again through that lens now, of course, of knowing her and her massive, obviously, movies now. It's such an interesting film because they play around. It is following her story, but then there's some details that they change a little bit. And I don't know whether that was like for legality. Obviously, they changed the name of her companion in the film from who she was in real life. And they did change, some of the details here or there. But it's really a great kind of example to me of when you look at serial killers, because I have a bizarre level of knowledge about them. When you look at serial killers and what shapes serial killers, it's interesting because she really had this kind of very sad upbringing, and they don't really get into that much in the film. They really focus on that one chunk of time where it was like the event that caused her to start doing the killing. But it's interesting to watch because I felt like I had so much compassion for her. And even in the moments where, towards the end of her killing spree, and she does kill the gentleman who was very innocent and kind. And she's so, even in that moment, very kind of torn about, is she doing this or not? I thought that they did a really good job of creating a very, very obviously deeply flawed character that you still had compassion for. I thought that was very interesting. I also think it's interesting, when you think about her and her story, that they kind of end the movie as she's being sentenced. Now, in real life, I don't know if you've watched any of the footage of her, but she really kind of went off her rocker, not that she was necessarily on it while she was doing her killings, but towards the end, she really did kind of, go out to lunch a little bit, and she changed her story towards the end as well. And then all of a sudden started saying her killings did not start in self-defense, and she changed her story completely. And there was a lot of I remember controversy from the reading that I've done about what was her mental status. Was she of sound mind at the time of the killings, at the time of her death? It really, to me, overall, did kind of take a snapshot of a very tragic story on every level. It's a very, very sad, true story. And I think they did a really good job at and also I think that Charlize Theron did a really good job at playing someone who is off, who potentially also has brain damage from childhood, but never in a way that felt forced or like put on. I really did believe her in the role.
Yeah, I believed her too. And I'm just going to touch on two things that you brought up. One of the things is that when this movie came out, this kind of makes me mad too. When this movie came out, people paid more attention in the reviews of it and in the discussion of it concerning what she looked like. How there was this glamour puss of a movie star playing this serial killer who's not all that attractive. They paid more attention to that and the prosthetics that they used makeup wise to create the look of Eileen Wuornos on Charlize Theron than they did her actual performance. If you look at her performances on film, Charlize is no joke. And Patty Jenkins picked her for this film because she said she woke up in the middle of the night one night and The Devil's Advocate was on. You remember that movie with Al Pacino? Yep. So she said she woke up in the middle of the night and saw Charlize Theron playing that crazy wife to Keanu Reeves in The Devil's Advocate and said she is the one that has to play Eileen Wuornos in this movie because Patty Jenkins wrote the script as well as directing it. For Monster. I also wanted to point out, I always like to go back and see who was up for the role because it's fascinating to me.
Oh, me too.
Reese Witherspoon campaigned for this role. She campaigned for it. She didn't screen test for it, but she campaigned for it. Now, the ones that screen tested for it were Kate Winslet, Heather Graham, Brittany Murphy, and Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Wait, and it gets better. And Kate Hudson was actually offered the role of Selby, which is based on the real life person Tyria Moore.
Wow.
I know, isn't that fascinating? And then I also wanted to point out that you were saying that the names changed for legal reasons. Tyria Moore is an intensely private person, and was like, y'all can tell that story, but I don't want my name anywhere in it. That's why they changed the name to Selby instead of Ty.
Right.
So that was that. And Patty said that they had to use a whole lot of imagination trying to write Selby, because they couldn't really refer to any of the true life stuff because of Tyria, because they didn't want to get sued, you know?
Right. Isn't it also interesting, and I know you kind of alluded to this also in your intro, but isn't it also interesting that it's a movie that was good enough for the lead actress to be nominated, didn't get nominated for anything else, and then she took a large break, which I'm only assuming, and I don't know if you know, but it feels to me like that's got to be connected. Like, that feels like such a huge slight. You directed this movie that was so great, and got this actress this role that she transformed in, and got her this award, and it didn't get you any other noms. That's a slap in the face, I feel like.
It is a slap in the face, which is so ironic that this week we have 2 women ever get nominated for Best Director for the Oscars this week. There were 2 women that have been directed out of the 5 slots. So that's historic. And it's 2021? I'm just saying. And I do know why Patty Jenkins took that break. She took that break mostly to raise her family, but she was also writing and pitching a reboot of Wonder Woman on film. And it took over 8 or 9 years just to get a studio to say, yes, we'll let you direct Wonder Woman. Really? So who did y'all want to get to direct Wonder Woman? J.J. Abrams? No shade to J.J. Abrams, but come on now.
Yeah.
I wasn't having that. I wasn't having that at all. I just want to, before we go to the next film, I want to point out this quote from the Roger Ebert review. I loved Roger Ebert. That was my secret mentor. But I want to point out what he said about Charlize's portrayal of Eileen Wuornos in this film. He says she is unequipped, and mostly about Eileen. She's unequipped for this struggle and lacks the gifts of intelligence and common sense. She is devoid of conventional moral standards. She is impulsive, reckless, angry, violent, and devastates her victims, their families, and herself. There are no excuses for what she does, but there are reasons, and the purpose of this movie is to make them visible. If life had given her anything at all to work with, we would have no sympathy, but life has beaten her beyond redemption. I think that's the best way to encapsulate that movie, because it's just so... It's a lot to unpack in that film that we don't even get to see. And just to tie it up, Eileen was convicted of her crimes, obviously, and she was executed on October 9th, 2002. And and Tyria testified against her.
Oh.
Which must have been hella hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know if you heard this, but I just read last night, they're actually coming out with a prequel to Monster. This is like just announced.
Ooh, girl, drop the ducats. I love it.
One of the gals, no, I'm blanking on her name. I'm so sorry, but one of the gals from Cobra Kai, she is going to be playing a young Aileen Wuornos, and it's kind of in the early years of her story, you know, that would lead up to where kind of Monster began, which I thought was also an interesting... I mean, is that an interesting story? I'm sure it is, but I also was like, I didn't know that we were going back to that well. I mean, I just thought that was such an interesting choice in 2021.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like that well is dry. Let's not go back there. It was hard enough to watch it the first time. Do we really want to see what got her to that place? I don't think so. Let's talk a little about the little things. I'm gonna tell you what I thought about the little things. First of all, I love the fact that it was a trifecta of Oscar winners in that movie. Like, that was the major reason I wanted to watch it. You had Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. And not for nothing, but Rami Malek and Jared Leto are a little, they're a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on screen in the characters that they play. So I was wondering how that was going to play out against Denzel Washington, who usually is very rooted and grounded in some type of reality of a human being. So what did you think about it?
I came in here. I came in wanting to like this. You know what I mean? Like I am the target demographic here. I'm a fan of all these actors. I'm a true crime nut. So I was like, I'm ready to go. And overall, I did enjoy the film. For me, there was a few things that I was kind of not, I wouldn't know if confused by is the right word, but I felt like there was a few like character choices that I would have loved to have just been a fly on the wall. Like, you know, to me, it was like Jared Leto had clearly created this character and wanted to have this belly and the limp and everything. And I get it, but I was also like, I don't know what that afforded us. To me, it took me out a little bit at times. I felt like it was like an affectation that the character to me didn't really need. And similarly, there was a couple times with Rami Malek where I was like, is he doing a voice? Is he doing an accent? Like, what is, I couldn't tell if there was, it was odd to me. Again, just some of the character choices. Denzel to me is like, it's so good. Denzel is so good. I have no notes. But overall, I do think it was like, I thought it was a really interesting crime story. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride, all of the above. I loved, you know, the ending and those kinds of things, the twist, if you want to call it a twist. I thought it was a good one overall. For me, again, my only notes were just, I felt a little bit like I was like, were those choices necessary? It's like anytime I see like someone in like a very established actor with like a walking stick or something in a movie that's never discussed, I'm like, did we need that?
I can't.
You know what I mean?
I cannot. I can't handle you right now.
But I loved it. I thought it was great overall. But yeah, those are the only things that stuck out to me. I was like, okay.
You know, this film is very interesting because in the film critic community, it's one of those films that divides people. Mm-hmm. They either really, 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 really loved it, or they really, 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 really did not. There was no gray area when people came to talking about this film. And a few people were kind of salty that Jared Leto even got a nomination, because they was like, really though? Like, we love Jared Leto, but that's what y'all gonna do this year? Okay. And we've seen how as the award season has gone along, it's kind of dwindled down. So
yeah.
I think we spent enough time on the little things.
I love it.
Girl, but Prisoners though? When you put this on the list, I was like, that film sounds familiar. I could have sworn I've seen this film. And then I looked at the picture. I'm like, oh, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm a Jake Gyllenhaal groupie. Like, for real though, like if I ever met him in real life, it would be a situation for real. I kind of have like a big old crush on Jake Gyllenhaal. And I have an even bigger crush on Hugh Jackman. So then I remembered that I had seen this film. And of course I saw it. It was Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman, and I got a crush. Of course I'm going to be there. But baby, what I didn't remember, because I went back and watched it, and what I didn't remember was that freaking twist at the end. I was like, oh. I did not see that coming. And this film it wasn't based on any particular real true crime situation. It was like an amalgamation of a lot of different situations that you had seen in the newspapers, in the headlines throughout the beginning of time. But the way that they had it come together, and the way they had it come together at the end was like, what? And it made me an even bigger fan of Melissa Leo, because she was like, for a minute, she was the girl. She was the it girl for like 2 seconds.
Yep.
I was kind of loving her. And it had an all-star cast: Hugh Jackman, Melissa Leo, Viola Davis, Terrence Howard, Maria Bello. Yeah, it was just a bunch of people in this movie. And I was like, what?
Yeah. I know. My boyfriend, he suggested this one. We watched this early pandemic. And he's like, have you ever seen Prisoners? I was like, no. He's like, oh, you got to see it. You like true crime stuff. And it was so funny because it was a movie that I don't remember. I don't know when it came out. I don't remember. For some reason, it did get by me when it was brand new.
It came out in 2013.
Okay, mm-hmm. Yeah, it got by me. And for me, I was like, I thought it was a really interesting, again, as someone who I definitely consume a lot of like true crime documentary stuff. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it spoke to a side that you don't see in true crime documentary, which is the emotional side of the victims, of the families and whatnot, and what that can drive people to, etc. I thought it was great. I was like, this is like I was shocked that I had never heard of it. Truthfully, I was like, I think this is a great kind of, I don't know if it's a movie that I would need to revisit many times, but I think that it was really entertaining and of this kind of like genre, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. Speaking of genres and true crime documentaries things. Let's talk about American Murder, because again, this was something that you chose, and I was like, American Murder, have I seen this? And then I realized I had seen it, and I was gagging when I saw it, because I thought, so did he just watch the Scott Peterson playbook of how to have an affair? Is what I thought when I saw this, because I was like, really though?
I know, it's so odd to me. There's so many times like that's something that fascinates me. I'm always fascinated by the psychology of all of this. I think that's why I'm interested in true crime. Like the psychology of what drives people to do these things fascinates me. And that is exactly part of it for me. I'm like, how is it that two completely separate people could have a literal, almost exact same experience, and that it results in the same, although in this one even more obviously
it was
grisly.
Worse than this one, because what he did to those girls was just like, how can you have, look at those faces, how could you have that in your world, bring that into this world, and be so incensed and crazy that you would, I don't want to ruin it for y'all, but if you've seen this story in the news, you know what happens to them. And I just was like, and I'm like you, I'm fascinated by the psychology of people that do this. I don't understand what happens in someone's brain matter that they snap and think that taking another life is okay and that they're going to get away with it. Like, I'm fascinated by how somebody gets to that place in life.
And with this guy especially too, I would love to know more about his backstory, his upbringing, those kinds of things, because seemingly it feels like we're not talking about an Aileen Wuornos situation where she was literally abused basically from the time of birth, left, horrifying things happening her entire life. It seemed as though and maybe, again, I don't know, but it seemed as though he had a fairly normal or average existence to then all of a sudden one day, and when he speaks about it, just being so kind of devoid of really seeming to grasp or show emotion for the horrific things he did, and also with very little motive, in my opinion. Like that's terrifying to me, because it's like, so wait a minute, so anybody can just at any moment turn into a complete monster. I mean, right? That just is, well, let's just close up shop. You know what I mean? Like that's a terrifying kind of concept at the best of times. But the other thing I do have to say very quickly is, I thought what was really unbelievable about this film, for people who haven't seen it, is the way it was done. It's all done from existing found footage. So it's done from police body cams, social media posts that they had made. It's really interesting filmically, I think, too, especially if you are into true crime documentaries. This one is very unique just in its style and how they tell the story.
Absolutely. And I was remiss in saying what the title was and where you can find it. So it's called American Murder, The Family Next Door. It's currently streaming on Netflix, and it centers around the murder of social influencer Shanann Watts and her husband, Chris, and how that goes down. But it is streaming on Netflix right now. She was a social influencer, so she documented everything. And I love that they even took her text messages and the voice messages and tied them all together. So yes, you're absolutely right. And it was very unique in the way they tied it all together. Something that they did almost kind of sort of like this, but not really. So Lost Girls was a documentary first before it was a feature film. And I was fascinated in watching the feature film because it was directed by Liz Garbus. And I'm a huge proponent and advocate of female filmmakers, women filmmakers. I applaud them and I lift them up on this podcast all the time. And the very first time I went to Sundance, Liz had directed a documentary called What Happened, Miss Simone, about Nina Simone. So when I came back to Sundance, like some years later, and she was available to interview for this film, rather, I was all over it. And I got to talk to her about that. But Lost Girls is the dramatization of an unresolved true crime story that involves a serial killer on New York's Long Island. And the young lady that was killed and abducted, her name also is Shanann, Shannann, like the young lady in American Murder, Gilbert. So yeah, it's based on the 2013 nonfiction book. This one wore me out because it it glaringly pointed out how when women go to the police and say, this is happening, something's wrong, you need to investigate it, how they're often ignored. And they were ignored not only because they were women, but because Shannon was a sex worker. So they were like, who cares about that life? That life was still somebody's daughter. It was still
Absolutely.
somebody's sister. It was still somebody's friend, and it was still a life. So that I was so angry watching this. I was really mad watching this.
I did have to take breaks. I'll be honest.
You know?
I had to take breaks. I thought it was fantastic, but I had to take a couple breaks where I was like, I need to do a lap. I need to do a lap. I need to take a breathe, take a breath, because it was, yeah, I mean, it is, I think they did a great job. I thought they actually did a great job with the mother character as well. The mother of Shanann in the film, really portraying her as like, she's not a perfect person. She's not, she is a very kind of flawed character, which is first of all refreshing because it's so rare for us to see females represented in ways that aren't just, glossed over kind of versions of real people. But secondly, it really does kind of paint that story that is so common. Again, especially if you're into true crime, you hear these refrains over and over and over again about women not being believed, not taken seriously. And certainly, like you're saying, if anyone is involved in sex work, much like the other documentary you recommended, Tales of the Grim Sleeper, which is a great watch. And I think we're going to cover this on the podcast, because I was like, this is a serial killer I have never heard of before, and this story needs to get told. We usually only do unsolved stuff, but I was like, this story needs to get told. It's important, and such a great reminder also, again, police were telling people at the time, he's only killing prostitutes, so who cares?
And Black women. Let's talk about that. He was killing prostitutes and Black women, and Black people in general, when it comes to, when little children are abducted and they're Black, or a woman is murdered and they're Black, or a man is shot and killed and they're Black, the law enforcement locally and federally have a tendency, or a habit, I should say, of ignoring it and just not paying attention. I remember Tales of the Grim. I remember this coming on the news here because I live in LA, right? So, and I've been here for a minute. I was here long before you, Miss Lauren, because you're an import from Canada. But
I am.
But I remember seeing this on the news. I remember them talking about this man in real time, talking about how these girls were missing and how there were these common threads. And I was like, this fool is walking around in plain sight looking like a normal person. I wonder where he is. And the other thing that was fascinating to me about this is that Black people would always go, ain't no Black people serial killers. Ain't no Black people running around killing folk. Well, this time they this time they were just like that DC sniper. We were like, we were like, in the Black community, and people that are Black watching this, they're gonna know I'm telling the truth. In the Black community, whenever somebody would get shot, whenever it was a serial killer, whenever it was some drama like that, we would always say, that's some white people stuff. Ain't no Black people doing that. Ain't no Black people, ain't no serial killers that are Black. Yeah, we can't say that no more.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it is really worth a watch. And again, for me, because I wasn't living here at that time, it was just such an eye opener that I was like, how have I never heard this story? I feel like this is a story that needs to continue to get told and put out there again to remind people about how important it is to, believe women and listen to people. There's again, we can get into so many details of it. It was so great, but there was people going to the police saying, this guy's a problem. There's this guy has
talking about that house.
Yeah. And it was just, and look what ended up happening. I believe it was 180 women he killed.
And there was one woman out of all those people that he killed, there was one woman that survived, and her name was Anitra Washington. She's 57 years old now, but she's the only person that he shot that survived. The only one. And when they interviewed her in real time, she couldn't really articulate it because I think she was just in shock. But years later, now that she's been able to process it a little better and go through therapy, she's come to the conclusion that the only reason why she got out and promoted the documentary is because she really just wanted to know why would this man want to shoot me? Like, why is he just running around shooting people? And why did he shoot me? And why am I the person that survived. So she had that survivor's remorse that she's walking around with. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. But girl, these were some fantabulous films. I love talking this stuff with you because we're both like, yeah, and this, and yeah, and that. We're just like, oh, and remember this part? Like we're those dolls. We really are.
100%.
I want to pop back into the chat room and give you some love from some people.
Please.
Somebody from Canada says they love you so much from Mississauga. Is that how you pronounce it?
Mississauga.
See, I just totally butchered it, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
And people are saying, and then Brandon loves to give me props about animation stuff. So he says that there's a character that he loves in a sci-fi thing that's coming out. He recommends it. So it's Final Space has a character lore sci-fi action that he highly recommends. So I always try to give him love because he draws pictures for me and stuff and sends them to me online.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really kind of cool. And then Snake 4 says, hey, Lauren.
Hi, Snake 4. Snake E4.
Snake E4. So with all of that, Lauren, this was really fast. I wish we had more time, but we'll have to do it again. And I'd love to come and hang out with y'all sometime. Although with your researcher girl, I don't know if I'll be able to hang. She may be like, yeah, that's not true. Let me just check you on that detail right there.
Listen, I mean, she is an encyclopedia. It's wild. No, thank you so much. I said to you in your email, Carla sent me an email and I was like, here's all my thoughts. And I realized it was like this long. And I was like, you knew that you were talking to a nerd, right? A movie nerd? Okay, good. This is such a joy. I would absolutely love to come back anytime. And we're starting to do bonus episodes with guests. So and the pressure is a little bit lower there. She doesn't get into the hardcore stuff there. So you will be getting a message from me about that for sure.
Thank you, Lauren. And you guys, don't forget to watch the 1-hour season finale of Superstore this Thursday on NBC at 8 p.m. where you can say goodbye to Dina, Glenn, Mateo, Cheyenne, Garrett, Marcus, Justine, Saeed, Sandra, and myself for the final time. But you can also catch all of the episodes of all 6 seasons streaming online at Peacock TV.
Yes, and Hulu.
Thank you for that commercial break.
There you go.
All right, sis, I'm going to let you go and I'm going to kick you out of the studio. But thank you again so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This was such a joy.
All right, bye.
Bye.
You guys, I love Miss Lauren Ash. Let me move that over there. Yes, I love me some Miss Lauren Ash. And Caitlin's like, oh no, not ready to go. Yes, it is time to go because we're actually 7 minutes over our time. But hold up, wait a minute. Before we go, let me tell you what I'm going to be talking about next week. So I took a detour from award season because it was just all overwhelming with award season stuff dropping, Oscar nominations dropping, and award stuff. It was like, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to devote a whole show to that next week. We're going to go through every single part of it, the SAG Awards predictions, the analysis of the award season thus far, and all of the nominees from the DGA to the WGA to the ACE to the Oscar to the whatever. We're going to talk about it here on the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. And just to remind y'all, this I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, tomorrow is the 2nd anniversary of Jordan Peele's Us. It will be discussed on social media by esteemed film critic Elvis Mitchell. So you don't want to miss that. Go to my Twitter account to learn more about it. So until the next time, I am your host, Carla Renata. You have tuned into the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata here on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook Live, where I talk about movies and interview people above and below the line in the film industry. Don't forget again to catch the series finale of Superstore at 8 p.m. this Thursday on NBC. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a big old thumbs up that you was here. Wash them hands. Stay safe. Social distance. And I will catch y'all on the flip side. Love, peace, and hair grease. Bye-bye.